Hey gang, my name is Alex Rhodes, and this is the aptly named Alex Rhodes Show featuring independent artist interviews, their songs, and sometimes even live performances. We talk about the art, the music, the deep stuff, how it all relates to marketing, which is so necessary in today's world. And then we chat just all around silliness. This show airs live each week on Monday from 7 to 9 Mountain. That's 9 to 11 Eastern, 8 to 10 Central Time, and 6 to 8 Pacific Time. It airs on kpeo.org, World Community Radio. But for you modern day listeners who don't believe in appointment-based entertainment, I edit it to podcast every week, most weeks. My guest today is Pamela Machala, an award-winning singer-songwriter and pianist living in Denver, Colorado. Welcome to episode 3. Now, I first met Pamela at Durango Song Expo. Then we met again at Song School in Lyons. We've always run in similar circles in the Denver scene, and we're even in the same songwriting group. It was great to make some time to sit down, and it was really great to get to know each other and talk music. Our conversation starts off deep right from the start, and it was really great to get Pamela's insight into where songs come from, the marketing and the making, living, playing music, and her recording process for Something Simple, which is her latest album, and we hear some songs from that album. Pamela is an accomplished award-winning songwriter. In 2018, she won American Songwriter Magazine Lyric Contest. And in 2019, she won the Songdoor International Songwriting Competition. And they said, quote, Pamela's song was a runaway winner. It's the largest margin for a winning song we've ever had, end quote. So we're talking about great songwriting here today. Pamela's a native of Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, and she grew up in a family of professional classical musicians. Her grandfather was Louis Teicher of the piano duo Ferrante and Teicher. When asked how she started playing music, Pamela recalls, it's kind of like that joke where two young fish are swimming along and an older fish asks them how the water is, and one fish turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" She says in her family, music was always around and part of everyday life. It's just what they did. Hours of practice time was the norm for everyone in her household, and her twin brother is featured on the album, and he plays strings on the song Leave You Alone. If you want to support the Alex Rhodes Show in a non-monetary way, give this podcast a video like or a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you want to support me in a monetary way, head on over to alexrhodesshow.com. Be unique, buy a CD. No one does that these days, and you could be one of those unique people. I appreciate it. Now, let's get to the interview with Pamela Machala. We just heard Ain't It Grand by Pamela Machala. And Ain't It Grand, she's right here in the studio tonight.
Hey Alex, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about music and where I always like to ask musicians this question to start with. Where does the music come from?
I would like to quote Leonard Cohen and say, if I knew that, I would go there more often.
Excellent. I agree. Is there anything you do as a musician or a writer to get the juices flowing or to get in connection with whatever that is?
Totally. I think if I had to put a finger on it, I would say that it comes from emotion, and if an emotion is passing through us and we can just catch it on its way out, I think of it like putting a feeling in a bottle. That's what a song is to me, in a way.
Yeah. So, and this, we started off very mystical tonight, so.
We really did.
We're jumping right in and
Just getting deep right off the bat.
But I think as an artist or any sort of creator, there is that vibe, that thing that flows through you and you don't know what it is and it's hard to explain. But when you have it, you know it. And I think it's very hard for creators and artists to talk about where it comes from or how you, because we don't know.
We don't know. And also it's a hard thing to put to words because as songwriters, we use the combination of words and music to express the things that just words by themselves cannot. So talking about the process is hard for that reason because we don't have the combination of those two mediums. But I don't know. I think sometimes I feel like every song is sort of its own animal and has its own origin story. So sometimes it will start with a concept. I think the best songs that I've written have been what I described earlier, an emotion passing through and catching it on its way out. And then some songs start with a concept. So for instance, I'll give you an example.
Excellent. We love examples on this show.
A new song that I just wrote came out of the following experience where I was in a song circle jam share with some songwriter buddies, and at the end we decided to have a little blues jam, and one of the guys, there's a piano and he's like, we can share piano, I'll do the bass line, you can be on the high part of the piano, and he was kind of showing me what notes to play for a blues in C, and I was like, I know how to play a blues in C. And he was like, oh, okay. And we start playing, and then at some point we swap, so I'm walking the bass line, and he's shouting out the chords for me, and I'm like, dude, I know how to play a blues in C. And afterwards he was like, sorry, I was kind of mansplaining the blues to you, and I was like, you were. And then I left that experience being like, okay, so, there's sexism that floats in the air that we breathe, even for folks who are, doing the work and think of themselves as feminists. Sometimes just things, you make assumptions because that's in the air.
Mm-hmm.
But also I was like, is it because I don't use as much of my technical chops for my songs as I could? Because a lot of my songs have really simple piano parts because I don't want something technical to be above the song. What I always want is to serve the song.
Sure.
And anything I can do to bring out that message and meaning of the song is what I want to do. And often it's not something flashy on the keys. But I was like, what if I just wrote a little revenge blues to include in my live set to show that I can shred?
Yeah.
And so I wrote that song, and it's called Don't Take a Banana to the Airport and Other Unsolicited Advice. And it's just a silly blues song that has, basically I wrote silly lyrics to just be able to showcase a blues solo in the live set.
Does it have the word mansplain?
It doesn't,
in the
but
lyrics?
It probably should.
I find it interesting that you bring that up because I wonder why, and mansplain puts it in a very male versus female kind of context, but I feel like we both do that. Both sexes do that to each other. Why do we do that?
We're just breathing some toxic stuff in. I can't cuss on the air, right?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, let's keep it clean. Let's keep it clean. I think we're all doing our best, and there's just structures that we come into that, make us think, oh, you're the other. It comes back to that dehumanizing stuff.
Now, talking about being overly technical in a song and having that overpower the song, I come at it from a very different perspective where I'm like, got 4 chords, we're good. And I know similar to what you're saying, I could make it more complicated, but is it unlistenable, or am I, back to what you were saying, am I showing off my chops? And where do you find the balance in that as an artist between, hey, audience, this is something really interesting that I can do, and this is for you, and how do you meld that all together to make it work?
That's a great question. I think it still always comes back to the particular song, and it depends a lot on the genre too. So, what would Layla by Eric Clapton be without that solo?
Yeah.
But also, if you put a solo in the middle of Someone Like You by Adele, what's it doing there?
Yeah.
It's like, what is the purpose? What's it doing? The audience is going to love it in Layla, and they're not going to love it in Someone Like You because it doesn't serve the song.
Yeah. How do you find what serves the song? Is that something that's natural? Is that something that is cognitively decided?
That is something I spend most of my waking hours thinking about. Yeah, that's the meat. That's what I think I do. I don't think it's natural as much as studied. I've like studied a lot of songs and thought about it a bunch, and although I think everyone does have some type of internal compass and taste. So, I came up on a lot of Disney, musical theater, the Beatles, R&B. Like I have my influences, and because of that, and probably just because of the unique human that I am, I have my taste, and I have very strong preferences and like a strong compass for what I do like and what I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to follow that, and then also try to gather a lot of information and see what other people are doing in their songs and what I like about that and what I don't.
Now, what's your favorite Disney song?
That is such a hard question. I could not pick just one. But if I had to pick just one, oh man, it might be A Whole New World.
Whole New World, Aladdin, correct?
Yeah.
Now, animated version or the newer version where it was not animated?
Man, the animated version.
Okay.
I tried to watch part of one of those live action Disney remakes, and I did not make it past
Isn't it
30 minutes.
Interesting how you go back to this? Well, no, that doesn't match up with my nostalgia, so it's instantly written off.
Exactly. I think it would have been better if they had not made it a scene-for-scene remake.
Recreation, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I really liked the remake of Mulan because they didn't try to do that.
Yeah, because I have kids, so we watched the animated version. I was like, I don't think you guys are ready for the real version.
It's a little more violent. A little bit.
So, speaking of your influences, you grew up in Champaign, Illinois.
I did. I grew up actually in Urbana, which is the cooler half of that town.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's Urbana-Champaign? Is that?
Exactly right. Yeah. Or as we lovingly call it, Shampoo Banana.
Shampoo. Okay.
Champaign, Urbana.
Got it.
It's pretty much one town. There's not a division. It's like one street is Urbana and the next block is Champaign.
So it's like the Twin Cities.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
there's no replication. It's just the same city with two different names.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose there's differences. Urbana's a little smaller, and most of the University of Illinois is there, so most of the campus is in Urbana.
Oh, because they always say Champaign on TV when I'm watching sports. It's Champaign.
And that Champagne's the bigger one, and it's got more of the business and industry, so
okay.
I think it is the more well-known of the two.
Well, let's talk about childhood. Did you grow up with music in the house?
So I grew up with two classical musicians for parents.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. So my dad was the French horn professor at the University of Illinois. My mom she taught there for a bit, and she was later a piano professor at Eastern Illinois University, which is about an hour south.
Okay.
And I don't remember a time when I didn't play music. There wasn't, and there also wasn't a conversation of, oh, I remember the minute when I told my parents I wanted to take music lessons. No, it was just, speaking of the air we breathe, it was
there.
like, it was in the air in the house. So I have a twin brother who is a violinist, and we grew up, we actually both started on violin when we were like 4 years old, and strings were just not my jam. So when I was 5, I switched to piano, and I studied with my mom till I went off to college.
Now, what was it like studying with your mom? Is that like she's sitting at the piano with a ruler hitting your hand when you do the wrong thing, or how was that relationship?
It worked surprisingly well. I think in part because I was like a pretty obedient child, and me and my mom always had a really good relationship. I think it doesn't always work for the parent to, try to teach their kids something. And we didn't exactly have regular lessons. Like, I think sometimes we would go a few weeks without a lesson, but she would also be in the house while I was practicing. So, I'd be practicing and she'd be in the kitchen cooking dinner, and she'd be like, F sharp. So, there was a lot of sort of like musical interaction in the house. And I think also something that was really important was that my parents modeled practicing. So, at any given time in the house, like, my dad would be practicing French horn in the basement. My mom would be practicing piano. My brother would be practicing his violin in his bedroom. Like, there was just a lot of practicing always happening. And there was also sort of this interesting dynamic of, like, my parents always told us, don't become a musician for your job because it's a terrible way to make a living. But also, there was this expectation that we were going to practice our instrument for at least an hour a day, because that's what we do in this house. So it was like this interesting sort of relationship growing up with music that I'm still trying to unpack.
It sounds like you had a very sound childhood. I got to figure out a way to work a dad joke in. I apologize to everyone. So speaking of having music pay your bills and having that be your career, is that your full-time career? Are you doing other work?
It's my full-time gig.
Full-time gig. So tell us about that lifestyle and what that looks like.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
Thanks for asking, Alex. It's really a combination of lots of bits and pieces. So I have a Patreon that I'm very grateful to that platform and the folks who are my community there. That's like a huge source of, it's, stability for me month to month. And for folks who don't know about Patreon, that's a subscription service similar to Netflix or Spotify, where you can pay like anywhere from $3 a month upwards to get content from a creator. Could be a musician or a poet or painter or someone who makes video games, YouTuber, etc. And that's a place where I share, brand new songs. Like, patrons get first listens to everything I write, like, before anyone else hears it. And cool show announcements, basically like sort of backstage pass VIP content.
And it's Pamela Machala on Patreon, correct?
It is, yes. And
let's be sure everybody gets over there and checks that out.
Let's spell that for you because it's weird. Machala. That's my last name.
Pamela, Machala on Patreon. That's also Facebook, Instagram, all that goodies.
Yep, everywhere.
So you've got your Patreon.
So I've got my Patreon. I've got, I teach piano lessons.
Okay.
And obviously the past couple years, due to the pandemic, have been a little weird performance-wise, but things kind of came back last summer through the fall, and this is another season of more gig scarcity.
Yeah.
but I, in a normal season, do play a lot of my own gigs, mostly solo and some band. And I also do dueling pianos.
Okay.
Which is, I think you probably know from our mutual friend,
Andy
Sitto.
Yeah.
Yep. That's actually how I know Andy Sitto, is through his old roommate, Kevin McHugh, who worked at Howl at the Moon, the dueling piano club that I worked at, starting in 2015. And for folks who haven't seen dueling pianos before, it's basically an all-request cover show that you could say it's like a cross between a wedding band and stand-up comedy. There's a lot of dirty jokes and bits and banter and, Don't Stop Believing, Piano Man, all the other kind of piano bar classics.
Where does the duel come into play?
Great question. I think originally there was maybe more dueling, but now it just means there's two of us on stage at once and we alternate playing songs.
Gotcha.
And for certain songs, we might do a little bit of a solo battle, like Sweet Home Alabama or
Brown-Eyed Girl. We'll just go down the list of
there we go.
Piano Man.
Exactly.
Got it. So was your first meeting with Andy an actual duel?
No, I think I met him I'm trying to remember what the first time I met him was, but I think it was maybe at Kevin's place, because Kevin used to play in my band, in my original music band before he moved to Ohio, and he and Andy Sitto used to room together. So
Gotcha.
I think that's how I met Andy.
Okay.
And then we kind of became songwriter friends, because it's a small
world,
crew.
the songwriting,
exactly.
the songwriting world.
Yeah.
Now let's step back to growing up with everyone in your house playing music. Did you guys ever come together and play music as a family?
We did, but it wasn't jamming. It was the very classical music thing of let's sight read this chamber music.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's listen to another song. I've got Cardboard Cutout here. Can you tell us about Cardboard Cutout before we play it?
It's a breakup song.
A breakup song. You got to have them.
We've all got one, or
Yeah.
50. So this is off my last record that I put out in October of 2020. And it was produced by Julian Peterson, Ben Longmont, awesome singer-songwriter, guitarist, producer, and we recorded at Mighty Fine Productions, awesome studio in Denver, and Klaus Larson was our engineer, and he's awesome too.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
All right. Well, we're going to get to it. Here's Cardboard Cutout by Pamela Machala, and we'll come back and talk a little more.
If you're a single man under the age of 35, you'd probably like to know what the ladies are looking for on an online dating site. A guy who had a few drinks and later got pulled over for buzzed driving. See, that could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And doesn't a guy who's back living with his parents but calls them my roommates just scream Mr. Right?
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Hi, this is Hannah Bayardi, jazz pianist and vocalist from the Music City of Detroit. You are listening to KPEO, World Community Radio.
These shoes, I wore them for years and now they don't fit anymore. I wore them for years and now they don't fit anymore. These arms, they held you for years and now they don't hold you no more. I'm sad and I'm free. I'm a gambling man with an ace and a three. I'm a crumbling building with a vacancy. I'm a wandering comet with no place to be. I'm a cardboard cutout who dreams in 3D. This house, I lived there for years, and now I don't live there no more. I lived there for years, and now I don't have a home. This drink, it soothed me for years, and now I don't wanna be soothed. It soothed me for years, and now I just want the truth. I'm sad and I'm free. I'm sad and I'm free. I'm a gambling man with an ace and a three. I'm a crumbling building with a vacancy. And I'm nothing like I thought I would be. I'm a cardboard cutout who dreams in 3D.
Cardboard Cutout by Pamela Machala. We have Pamela right here in the studio tonight. This is the Alex Rhodes Show on kpeo.org. World Community Radio. We're here every Monday night from 7 to 9. We interview artists. We talk about their songs. We play their songs. And then for people who aren't into the appointment entertainment, we put it out on podcast. So Pamela and I were just talking at the break about songwriting and what is songwriting and what's the hardest part of songwriting for you?
Well, Alex, for me, I think it's finishing songs. I have approximately 500,000 million, that's an exact number, bits and starts of songs, like first lines of the first verse, a hook idea, a riff, little bits and pieces. But actually getting to the finish line is really challenging for me. And I think this year I'm just practicing doing it more.
What is it about that? Because especially if you're not a songwriter, or even if you're, like I look at people who are painters, for instance, and I don't understand that medium, and I'm blown away when I see what they do. They, at least to me, don't seem like they have a problem finishing it. Maybe they do. What is it that's so hard about finishing a song, or I would imagine any piece of art?
Well, I think it's partly because it's never finished, and you are the person who decides when it is finished.
Ooh.
You can always add another brushstroke. You could always tweak a lyric. Like, this isn't the right verb. I need to change this chord, or maybe it should be in a different key. And then when you add recording and production on top of that, there's another stack of choices that have to be made, and the mixing, the mastering. Like, there's so many choices and decisions that have to be made. And this is one thing I actually really like about recording and putting out albums, because at some point you just have to decide, I can live with that, and it's going to be done, and it's going to be a record of where I was at the time.
So is that how you get past not making decisions?
Exactly. There's at a certain point, I'm like, I can live with that. That's my barometer of like, okay, I'll put my name on that. That's good enough.
Is it like an 80% rule? Is it a 90% rule? Or is there any standard rule? Or is it just like, I said I would get it done by this date and...
Deadlines are great. I work really well with deadlines, and I'm trying to impose more of them on myself.
Does it work for you when you impose deadlines on yourself?
Not always.
Okay.
Sometimes I wish I had a record label just so they could be like, we need the album by April 30th.
Yeah.
And I could be like, okay, I'll get it done.
Say I'm interviewing you and having self-help notes over here. Like, oh, okay. It doesn't always work, but you need to make it work.
It doesn't always work. I think accountability is really helpful for me. So if I can say on social media or something, oh, it's going to be done by this such date, then that helps me do it, although it's not perfect. But I think if it's just me and my own deadline that no one else knows about it, the chances that I'll get it done are like 50%.
Okay. All right.
It's not a great
that makes me feel
rate.
good. No, I had a similar experience where I said, I'm going to do this mashup album this year, and I got everything written, and I got most of it recorded. And then for some reason I could not finish it because I was going to put it out on YouTube, because that's really where you can do the mashups. And
yeah,
this year I finally decided to do it, and I'm crushing myself trying to make it happen every week. But I'm like, you got to do it because you said you would do it. So
good for you.
Thanks. Yeah, this is like a nice therapy session as well. Thank you.
You're doing it. You're doing it. Yeah, just finishing the things. There's another quote that I love. I think it's Ira Glass said, in order to get better at something creative, you just have to do a huge body of work and put yourself on some sort of deadline, like I'm going to make a video every week, or I'm going to finish a song every month, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like churn it out. And that's the magic sauce, is just...
And then you're good.
And then you're good. Yeah. I know we're like in a songwriting accountability group together.
That's true.
Where we have to finish a song every month, and like that's really helpful.
It is. I found myself, at least in that group, saying it is good enough, because
exactly.
I have to, the deadline's there.
Exactly.
Or you're out of the group.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, one of my songwriter friends, her name is Sarah Friedrich, told me this thing that I really appreciated and I think about often as I'm writing, which is just get to the first draft. If you can just get something out and say, okay, this is like a level of finished where I could play the whole song through and it would feel complete, even if it's a piece of crap, then you can always edit. So that's been really helpful for me to think about, especially like lyric wise. I think that's usually the last thing to fall into place for me. Like the music comes more easily, and the lyrics, finding exactly what words I want to use often takes longer. And just saying, oh, this could be a placeholder lyric. Like, you know how yesterday started off as scrambled eggs?
Yeah.
And I'm like, look how that turned out. So
yeah.
If I use a placeholder lyric here, it's going to be okay. I can go back and edit that.
Gotcha. Now, is there a moment where you're switching your brain from, okay, I have inspiration, the sort of energy flow that we were talking about earlier, to, okay, shutting that part of the brain off, now I'm into editing?
Definitely.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, there's a definite editing brain. So I think typically I will try and stay sort of in the more inspiration place through like a first draft. And I always come back to asking myself, what are you trying to say? Like, what do you really want to say here? And how can the music serve that? And like coming back to just creating sort of like a integrated song where everything is serving the same message. And then in the editing phase, I'll often work with like a rhyming dictionary or a thesaurus and be like, oh, well, I've got, you know, pierces here, but I also like jabs or stabs, and what's the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sort of a combination. I think that is more of the analytical brain thinking about how does it sing, like how does it sound and like feel in my mouth?
Mm-hmm.
How does it have that exact meaning that I'm looking for? Because sometimes synonyms, like, they sort of mean the same thing, but one is more right for whatever reason.
Sure.
So just thinking about that kind of stuff and being like, oh, is this metaphor like not really working? Going in.
Now, do you ever start with the editing side and switch over to the creative side?
I think I do. I think that sometimes happens if I start from a concept. For like the blues example I was telling you about earlier, or say, like, I'll just give you another example. I've been wanting to write a song. I got married a couple of years ago, and I've been wanting to write a song for my husband about how I will continue to love all the different people he becomes over the course of our lives. And
Whoa.
I know.
There's a lot packed into that.
There's a
Okay.
lot packed in, so I haven't finished it yet. No pressure. So sometimes when I'm starting with that concept, I think, like, how to explain this? If I go, maybe I should pick a different song example. Like, I want to write a song about bananas.
Mm-hmm.
So I might start with an exercise with some kind of word cloud. I'll put bananas, and then what else lives in the space of this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Fruits, trees, leaves, yellow. I'll like write down a bunch of words that are sort of related, and then I might use that as like a jumping off point for a lyric.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
It does, but then you're from there you're jumping back into the creative space. I think I've done that before. I know I've done that before, and then I'm instantly like, am I going into the right place now? I mean, and you're second guessing yourself, and then you start doing I'm being creative and I'm self-editing at the same time, which is this horrible trap. How do you get in and out of that trap?
Oh, that's a horrible, horrible trap. I really struggle with that. I just have to remind myself that the editor is like not invited to the first part of the party.
Gotcha.
And like, okay, I see you, editor. You're trying to do your thing. You're trying to say that's not the right word, or like that melody sucks. And then you have to just be like, thank you. Your turn will come, but like it's not right now.
Gotcha.
At least that's what I try to do. It's not always successful.
Okay. And so you write the song, you get the lyrics down, you have your melody. Do you ever play around with structure, or is the structure pretty much set by that point?
Oh, I love playing around with structure. Yeah, that's something else I love thinking about is where, like, what happens where?
Mm-hmm.
And playing with moving that around. What if this second verse is actually the first verse? Or what if it doesn't have a bridge? Or what if there's an instrumental before the bridge? Or like, what does that do to the overall experience of the song?
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah. So I get myself into trouble going into Logic because then you can chop and splice things up and move it around. And then I never save the first draft. And I'm like, well, how did I start this? Do you ever get in this position like that? You got to save as.
Yeah.
Do you ever get yourself into that position where you're, what did I start with? Is that?
I do. And sometimes if I'm out away from like my notebook and my computer and I don't get a voice memo of something, I won't remember how it was. Sort of more in the writing process, but during the editing process, I definitely try to take a voice memo of each draft. And, you know, if I'm working on something in Logic, I'll try to save it as a new file and be able to go back and like listen to the different versions and sort of say, okay, here's what I liked about this, but like this is the one, or we're going back to the old one.
Now, how many voice memos do you have in your phone?
500,000 million. So many. I'll never be able to get back to all of them.
I have the same, it's this graveyard, and I scroll through it, and I'm like, why do I still have this? I'm never going to come back to this. But there's some attachment. It's like a child in some aspect. Like, but that's a little part of me from, 2013. Well.
Exactly. And sometimes I do come back to them. And you never know. That's all these little bits. Like, I have this one. This is another one of the many songs where I just have a first line, and it's like, I don't want to die with songs still in me. I want to get them all out. And that's all I have of that song. But, really, I have this fear that I'm going to die before I can finish, all the songs that I want to.
Sure.
Just got to write furiously.
What is it? Do you have a goal every year to write a certain number of songs, or is it you do?
I think my goal every year is just to write more songs than I wrote the year before.
What are we at right now?
I think it's again about the finishing.
Sure.
I've got a chorus here, a blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year I finished 18 songs.
Wow.
And the year before it was 15. So
congratulations.
I am a slow writer. Sometimes it comes more quickly, but that's the exception rather than the rule.
Do you have those moments where you have I just finished 3 in a week, but...
The only times I've had 3 in a week, I think, have been from co-writes.
Okay.
Where we're in a session and we're going to finish this song in the session. Or maybe maybe 3 songs that were almost finished that I decided to work on all in that week.
Gotcha.
It's not that the muse visits me and I boom get 3. That has not happened to me.
Ah.
How about
See,
you?
I feel like the muse, for me at least, it's like, here are 4 really good ideas. Go finish them. And then I'm like, kind of back to what you were saying. I like this part, but am I going to get it done?
Yeah.
Now, with co-writing, how do you prefer to co-write with people? Because I've found that co-writing is kind of like dating. And I've done co-writes before with people who I'm like, oh man, this is going to be great. And it goes nowhere. How do you like to work, and what have you found works best for you and other people?
I agree. It's very much like dating. There has to be I think there has to be a couple things present. You have to like each other as people and want to hang out in a room for 3 hours or on Zoom or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have similar tastes. So if the song is going in a certain direction, musically, lyrically, you have to be if you don't like the same thing, it's also not going to work. Aside from that, I have no idea what makes it work. I haven't had a ton of co-writing experience, but I would say my best experiences have been when the other person is very just very open, and we both come to the table sort of without a preconceived notion of what it's going to be. I've had a couple co-writes where I end up feeling like it's very much the other person's song that I contributed like 3 lyrics to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best ones are where, because I tend to be a little bit more like introverted and shy when I'm not on stage. In my
Or on a radio program.
Or on a radio program, exactly. And I'm just more reticent. Like, it takes me time to like think about things and formulate my thoughts and say them out loud. And so often if I'm writing with someone who's more just sort of like things flow out, it's like they're just going to do their thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really struggle with is that I am a huge music theory nerd, and if the chords aren't right, I'm not happy. And if someone else is like sort of driving the harmonic bus,
Mm-hmm.
I have a really, really hard time with that.
Now, can you give me an example of where that would come in? Because I'm not a music theory buff, but, I've listened to enough pop music and pop music, it's 4 chords, to know, okay, this is where it should go, and then the bridge should, go to this part. But where does that start to irk you, I guess?
Yeah. If it's too 4-chordy throughout the whole song, sometimes that can work if there's enough.
If you're Tom Petty.
If you're Tom Petty, exactly. Tom Petty can do it. Or, Adele could do it because she's got cool melodic vocal stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think also just if I have strong tastes about like what chord progressions work and what chord progressions do not.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's something I hear and I'm like, it's just not working for me, then yeah, I sometimes will try to suggest something different, but I've also been in co-writes. Actually, just recently I did a sync camp up at the Music District in Fort Collins.
Oh, yeah.
Which was super cool. And that was my first experience doing a co-write where there's a designated producer in the room. And so there are 3 of us in the room and we each have our roles. Like there's a producer and then there's a top liner. That was, I was one of the top liners.
Okay. And define what top liner is, because I don't think everyone knows that.
Is writing the melody and the lyric. And everything else, including the harmonic structure, and then all the like rhythm and production of the track, is left to the producer. And it was really hard for me to sort of like sit there and be like, this chord progression is so boring, but it's not my job to like be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And actually, we layered on so much stuff by the end of the song that I was like, this is great.
Well, this is where working with a producer who's saying, okay, yeah, you got 4 chords.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to tweak your ear over here a little bit with this noise. What's that like, and how does a producer come to the table there?
Yeah. I'm just like dipping my toe in the waters of production, and it's so cool and so interesting.
Oh, God,
it's this whole other creative landscape. And like, I think my own goal for a year from now, but probably longer, further out than that, is producing my own music, because it gives you that other next level of creative control over like reaching the sound that's in your head.
Sure.
And there's just so many factors, like instrumentation and all the different ways you can process sounds and have like a completely different feeling from like the same instrument or the same vocal. Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool. And the producer that I worked with at Sync Camp was amazing. I've never seen somebody work so fast, so efficiently, so like, and just like commercially on. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of a part of me that is the indie artist that's like, commercial music, like, but I also really like a lot of really commercial, like, produced music. So I think what I'm hoping for, like, in the future of my writing is finding this happy medium of like things that are more produced and more commercial sounding, but still true to my own musical values of if it's been a 1-5-6-4 progression through the whole song,
Yeah.
we're gonna at least have like a 3 chord on the bridge or something.
Yeah.
Can you give me a 3 chord?
Let me have a bridge. Come
Let
on.
me have a bridge. Yeah.
I think you could aspire to be Tom Petty too. You know, just 4 chords straight through and just amazing lyrics all the way through as well.
Although he's got Last Dance with Mary Jane. It goes to a cool chord on the
Oh
chorus.
yeah, it goes to that minor in the chorus. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's true. The minor 7th, I believe. Minor 7th. I could be totally wrong.
Let's see.
Oh, here comes the music theory, guys.
All right. So the verse is like A minor, G, D. So I would call that, 6.
Because it's in minor, isn't it?
Yeah. I've never actually thought about analyzing that song. But
Because then it goes to the A major in the
exactly,
chorus.
on
Yeah.
the chorus it goes to the E minor and then to A major.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. And that's a great example of production as well, because being a guitarist and playing that song before, it doesn't sound quite right when it's just guy and guitar playing it. It still works, but it doesn't have the same oomph.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the production, and that's where what you're talking about in sync camp and working with a producer who's like, oh, I know how to make this work. Is that part of building a team? You know, because you hear a lot about musicians building out their team, and so they have everybody who has their own specific role.
I would love to build a team.
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Where do you find the people? Can I get some people who want to be on my team?
And how is there enough money to go around to keep everybody eating?
Exactly. That's kind of why that's one of the reasons I'm interested in going further with exploring production.
Yeah.
Because it is really expensive to make studio albums.
Very
And
expensive.
When you bring in a producer sort of who's a separate party than the engineer that you're paying the studio time, you're paying your producer, you're paying your musicians, it just adds up to a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to be able to record and release music more freely and more affordably. And
I don't think that the average listener, and this is for anyone who is not a musician, we're so spoiled by great production right now. There's so much good production. So then you hear your friend's song recorded and you're like, it's good. And you're right, it is good. But compared to something that's on the radio or something that's been synced in a movie or in an ad, it's not even close, because there's so much talent and so much skill in making that all work.
And sometimes it takes 6 months. Like Dua Lipa's producer worked on whatever song it was for 6 months. And that's a professional, someone who's been doing this for many years. And I'm like, well, I've been doing this for like 6 months now. In 20 years, I'll have it down.
The guy made $1 million. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm sure he did.
I hope he did.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen to another song, and then we'll come back and let's jump back into the beginning of the conversation where we went straight to mystical. Where does music come from? And we'll explore that a little more.
Love it.
And we'll start there. So this is To Open Yours. Do you want to give us an intro of what this song is about?
This is my JOMO song. So,
JOMO?
if you've heard of FOMO, the fear of missing out, JOMO is the joy of missing out.
Oh, okay.
So it's a song I wrote sometime after meeting my husband. And, you know, today's dating world with all the apps and options, you know, there's a lot out there. And I think it can be, having too many choices can make it harder to choose. And I wanted to celebrate the joy of having and finding something that you're so excited about that you're like, yes, I want to miss out on all the other stuff.
I love it. All right. To Open Yours, Pamela Machala.
Hi, this is T. Lyons, and you are listening to KPEO Radio.
It's on the tip of my tongue and I'm searching for the perfect words. Heart is flickering quick in my chest like a hummingbird's. Whatever comes our way now, for better or worse. Oh, I'm in it with you. I'm in it with you. Oh, I would shut these other doors, just hoping. I would shut these other doors, just hoping to open yours. To open yours. I'm a bundle of wants and desires and fears and dreams. I'm a sweater and every thread pulls a different seam. And I've never been any good at the choosing between. But now it's easy. Now it's easy. 'Cause I would shut these other doors, just hoping to open yours. I would shut these other doors, just hoping, just hoping. It doesn't mean that everything will be perfect. And it doesn't mean that anything will get easier. But looking at you, I feel so sure, like I never felt before. That the one I would choose again and again, the one I would choose again and again is you. I would shut these other doors, just hoping to open yours. I would shut these other doors, just hoping to open yours. To open yours.
Turn around.
We're talking about production here in the break, and you're saying that the producer you worked with built an entire track
Oh yeah, in like 20 minutes.
in 20
It
minutes.
was nuts. Yeah, he had all his drum samples from Splice and whatnot. He strummed a little acoustic, laid down some bass, and then he's like, "How's the writing going?" And I
You
was
guys
like,
done yet?
my eyes are like saucers watching him work.
All right. Now, I wanted to jump back into where we started this whole conversation. There's this mysticism in music. From where does it come from, and why do people even listen to it?
Wow, these are big questions. I think humans have been making art pretty much for as long as there have been humans.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out what we're doing here on this blue marble and what is this thing called consciousness and all these big questions that cannot be answered with words. So we have to go beyond words to something that connects us with something greater, whatever our belief or not belief may be. I think there's that, for me, there's like a sense of engaging with the mystery of it all that I feel more strongly through music and particularly songs. I think everybody has their own language that they resonate with the most. So for some people, that might be, I don't know, monster trucks, jewelry. There might be something that they just feel really passionate and excited about, and it makes them feel big things. And for me, that's songs. Like, songs have been so important in my life and like walked me through so many hard moments and made me cry so much and comforted me when I'm crying so much and have given me so much joy and movement and like all these really like big profound things. And I think the reason that I make songs is to hopefully like pay that forward. It's like not everyone feels that way about music and songs, and not everyone likes the same stuff.
Sure.
Super subjective. But for whatever niche of people happen to have a musical theater / folk / R&B background, come listen to my songs. They might mean something to you.
Well, and like you're saying with monster trucks, even if you go to a monster truck rally, the music they're playing in between the trucks jumping. I haven't been to one of those yet, and I really want to go. I felt like I was robbed in my childhood because I didn't get to go one. But the music that they're playing there is super amped up music because they want you to feel that energy.
The feeling.
And if you're buying jewelry, you're hearing a nice little piano. Tinkly.
Yeah.
Yeah, see? That's theory, right?
Exactly.
In whatever jewelry shop, right?
Music has the power to change our mood, to change feelings and to amplify what we're feeling.
Yeah.
So you go to the monster truck rally and there's like get pumped up music. And there's, I mean, a lot of that, it's really interesting when we start talking about production, because I think those particular kinds of songs are more about production than they are about what we would consider songcraft.
Oh, surely. Yeah.
And some of it could probably be written by a computer, you know?
Yeah.
Like we're getting into this
we're getting
time with AI where, you know, that's going to become possible and more common.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forget where I was going with this question, but I think
no, it's, you know, to your point, it is something that it's omnipresent. Even if you're not paying attention, there's probably some sort of music playing at the monster truck rally while you're shopping, while you're watching a movie. And I'm really keyed in on this, and I think you are as well, with the sync world, these songs in a movie where you're like, this is the moment, you know? And
yes,
a lot of times people don't even know that that's what's happening, you know?
People don't notice. It's really, I have this conversation with my husband a lot because he's not a musician and we have very different ways of listening to music. He's a huge music fan. He loves reggae and like rock and all these genres that I sort of like didn't listen to until we met.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes he really likes having music on in the background. And to me, it's not the background, because it's really hard for me when there's music on anywhere I am to not be listening to it with my analytical ear.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the grocery store and like Billy Joel, Just the Way You Are comes on and I'm like playing it in my head. I'm like, you know, I'm having this like emotional experience and he's like, you want this rice or that one?
Yeah. I'm the guy singing in the aisle across from you.
Yep.
And my kids are like, Dad, stop singing. I'm like, this is a good song. Yeah.
Exactly. This is such
Billy
a good
Joel.
song. This is a classic. Oh, when he goes to B flat, it's so cool.
Now, let's talk about what you have coming up, because you got a big show coming up.
I do. Yeah. So I've had a couple different iterations of my backing band, the Pamela Machala band, if you will.
Ooh, I like it.
And I took a break from playing band shows since March 11th, 2020. I think that was my last band show that I played, and did a little bit of soul searching and reflecting, and decided that I wanted to try to put together an all-female backing band. So we're going to have the debut of that new ensemble Friday, April 1st at the Muse Performance Space in Lafayette.
Friday, April 1st.
It's April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day, okay.
It's not a joke, but you might find a rubber chicken under your seat. You never know.
All right. Oh, we've got a theme.
We've got a theme. And it was actually supposed to be at the end of this month, but due to the Omicron surge, we decided to postpone it. I really wanted it to be an event and like try to get folks out and have an opener. And the venue is like, let's not do an opener because, you know, we're trying to keep shows to 75 minutes right now. And it's like, I want it to be more of an event. So I think postponing is the right move.
And now who's in the band?
So it's currently JJ Jones.
JJ Jones, now correct me if I'm wrong, but she has been bringing rhythm to the folkies for, that's her line, bringing rhythm to the folkies.
She brings rhythm to the folkies.
She's an excellent drummer. Excellent drummer.
How? Yeah, she's so good. She's so awesome, such a cool person. I sort of like have been having this thought in the back of my head for a while and was too shy to ask her because she's, you know, a teacher at the song school, and
she's a big deal.
She's a big deal. But she actually approached me after like the open mic at song school this past summer and was like, "Oh, I really liked your song, and you know, I just moved to the area, and you want to jam sometime?" And I was like, "I would."
Great, awesome.
So we started getting together and working on some songs, and then Adrienne Osborne is going to be playing bass, and she actually is someone I know as a vocal coach. She's like a really awesome vocal coach and singer.
Okay.
Who I took some lessons with a few years back, and she, in the last 10 years or so, has started learning bass and become this really like awesome bass player.
Nice.
And I reached out to her kind of expecting her to say she wasn't interested because she's like, I know she's really busy and has a lot of stuff going on, and she's like, yeah, I'd love to. So currently it's just the trio.
Nice.
I'm in the market for an electric guitar player.
A female electric guitar player.
Electric guitar
We're
player,
all in the market for that.
So if you know anybody.
All right. If there are any female
listening,
electric guitar players.
Yeah. Come my way.
We can book you a gig. Well, that's great. So that's the Muse, April 1st.
Yep.
And let's jump into song school real quick and talk about that experience, because we met there. Yeah. We met and we've known a few people from there and Durango Song Expo. Tell us about song school and why you go and why do other people go?
It is a magical, sacred place. I don't know how else to describe it.
Disneyland for music nerds.
Yes, but with substance.
And without
like
the Dole Whip or whatever the thing
exactly.
is.
Without the lines.
Yeah, without the lines for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4 days of camping out in Lyons, Colorado on the Planet Bluegrass grounds, and we just take songwriting classes, and it gets deep really quick.
It does get deep.
Kind of like the beginning of this podcast.
I felt like it was a safe space because we've both been
Exactly. We're coming with the song school attitude. Yeah, you just get right to the heart of things, and you cry in front of strangers. You were mentioning Amy Speece on the break, and I took her class last year, or whatever year it was before COVID. I took her class like all 4 days, and oh yeah, I ugly cried in front of like 40 people I'd never met before playing my song.
I was in her class, and she had the this lady singing a song, and it was a breakup song, and it was a really good song, very, very emotional. And she was talking about the performance of it, and she pointed to me, and she was like, you be the boyfriend.
Yep.
And I stared into this woman's eyes while she sang this very emotional song to me, and it was such an incredible experience. I've never met you, but I feel like we just shared
Now you're bonded for life.
I know so much about you and your emotional pain. Yeah, and I still know that lady, and we still talk. So yeah, it's a really interesting emotional setting.
Absolutely. Yeah, song school is where like deep connections happen, and like weird synchronicity always happens to me there. Like this past summer, I took Paul Reisler's class, and that was a really cool experience because on the first day of class, he partners you up, so everyone splits off into groups of 2, and you guys each tell each other like a 15-minute story about a transformational experience in your life. Something where there was a before and an after, and afterwards you're different. And so the woman that I got partnered up with, we just sort of formed this like instant bond because we, it was like, hi, nice to meet you. And here's my most intimate
my transformation.
Exactly. Here's this intimate story about my life. And then we ended up being in a lot of the same classes together and just had this like really cool connection develop. And yeah, Song School is one of my favorite weeks of the year every year. I'm already looking forward to it, and it's only January.
Yes. Song School in Lyons. Now, we've got a couple minutes here. I did want to talk about your awards and accolades. 2018 American Songwriter Magazine Lyric Contest. How did you win that, and for what?
I didn't win. I got an honorable mention.
Honorable mention. That's very honorable.
It was very honorable. The honorable mention presiding.
Yes.
I submitted a song. I think it was Cardboard Cutout.
Oh, great.
Yep.
The one we just played earlier.
Yeah. And one really exciting thing about that for me was that particular month, Taylor Goldsmith from Dawes was one of the judges.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, maybe Taylor like saw my lyrics and liked them. That was like such a fangirl moment because I'm a really big fan of his music.
There's a lot of piano and a lot of really good lyrics in Dawes music, so
his lyrics are amazing.
They're so
I
good.
love his lyrics. And his melody choices are really good.
And then in 2019, grand prize in Songdoor International Songwriting Competition. International, you're an international champion.
International prize winner. What can I say?
And what was that for? And tell us about that.
That was for my song "Bleeding Me Dry," which is also on, along with Cardboard Cutout, it's also on my most recent record. And that came out of left field. I submit to a decent number of songwriting competitions, and usually nothing comes of it. And this time,
sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does. And I had another fangirl moment with this one because one of the judges for that contest was this songwriter named Jason Bloom, who wrote a songwriting book that I had read like 10 years before.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I've read your book. You liked my song. There's a sense of satisfaction of like, well, I'm on the right path or something. Or
absolutely.
I took in the lessons that you were teaching in your book.
Yeah. We're having construction in the building now, too.
Very exciting.
You're bringing down the house. All right. Patreon, Pamela Machala, Machala.
Got it.
Facebook, Instagram, Pamela Machala. What else do we need to know? What haven't we talked about?
I think that covers it, Alex.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. This has been super fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
All right. And we're going to play one more song by Pamela, You Didn't Convince Me. This is the Alex Rhodes Show on kpeo.org. Thanks for listening. Monday nights from 7 to 9. I want to thank Pamela again for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll get to the music now.
This is you over 30 years ago.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And this is your mom now.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Roles change without us noticing. That's why AARP gives you the information to provide even better care for your loved one. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is Hands of Soul Joseph Wooten, keyboardist with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Steve Miller and the Wooten Brothers from Nashville, Tennessee. You are listening to KPEO, World Community Radio. This is Hands of Soul Joseph Wooten, keyboardist with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Steve Miller and the Wooten Brothers from Nashville, Tennessee. You are listening to KPEO, World Community Radio.
I got my hopes up, and I got my hopes crushed, and I was ready to be done. All my invitations, my insinuations, you never took me up on a single one. So imagine my surprise when you looked into my eyes and said, think how good we could be. Yeah, 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 you said it, but you didn't convince me. You didn't convince me. You didn't convince me. If you really want me, like you say you want me, then how come you never call? It's hard to believe that you really mean that when I don't see you putting any effort at all. Oh, we have a lovely time. I'm not trying to deny that, but you leave it to chance when that time will be. Yeah, 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 you leave it, and that doesn't convince me. That doesn't convince me. That doesn't convince me. Oh, you never know, you never really tried. Oh, you gotta, yeah, you gotta go after what you want. Oh, you never know, you never really tried. Oh, you gotta, yeah, you gotta go after what you want. Oh, you never know, you never really tried. Oh, you gotta, yeah, you gotta go after what you want. What you want. Oh, you never convinced me. You never convinced me, baby. Oh, you had your chance and you missed it. You had your chance and the ship is sailed. Yeah, 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 you said it, but you didn't, you didn't, you didn't, you didn't, you didn't convince me. No, you never convinced me, baby. And I wish you had, but you didn't.
Broadcasting live from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado, and KYBN Mountain View, California. This is KPEO, World Community Radio. You're listening to The Alex Rhodes Show.